Hello and welcome back to Sprite Guard Plays HyperRogue. I'm sorry there's kind of been a lack of HyperRogue on the channel recently. This is one of the hardest series, actually the hardest series to record. It takes a lot of takes. And what I wanted to talk about this week actually has to do with the number of takes that are required and the amount of difficulty that's involved in making these videos, because not too long ago somebody was posting on the roguelike subreddit, which is kind of a place for people to discuss games similar to this game, games in the same genre as this game. And somebody was asking for each of the games in the sidebar, which is kind of a little place where they have a list of different games in this genre, what is the win rate of different experts in those games? And a lot of people were saying, 100%, some people were saying 90%, and some people were saying 60%, and I realized that my win rate in this game is about 5% at best. Possibly even less. And I was kind of thinking about why that is, and my first fear was that it was a cheap game, because that is something that would really distress me, is if I had kind of put so much energy into playing a game that was not really one that people thought was fair, one that came down too much to randomness. And so I thought about it, and I realized that there's really only two things that I would consider cheap deaths in this game. And they both involve getting trapped by a bunch of enemies spawning at once, and neither one happens very often. One is when you just get swarmed by a whole bunch of ghosts in the graveyard, and there's nothing you can do kind of to escape them. And the other is if you get swarmed by a couple of eagles, and in both cases they can move faster than you, and they can basically shut down all of your options and just have you walk in a straight line until you run into a third monster that kills you. So those are not what end most of my games, and so I was thinking about, well, why do most of my games end before I've collected the Orb of Yendor? A lot of it is because I speedrun, because I try to do, I try to play very, very fast, and so I make a lot of decisions that are kind of the form, either this will get me killed, or it will save a few seconds. And so that always seems like a good trait to me, because if I end up getting killed, I just restart, nope, not much is actually lost. And if it saves a few seconds, that pushes me a little bit closer to getting a better time. But a minority of the runs that I do are speedruns. And so that couldn't explain why my win rate is so low in this game. Well, I talk while I'm playing this game. I do recordings of this game where I talk. You may have seen them. And talking really distracts me and makes it easy to lose focus, to forget what I'm doing, especially if I get really wrapped up in what I'm doing. And so there's definitely a risk in the videos where I talk of losing a run because I wasn't paying enough attention. And then I also throw out runs if I don't like what I was talking about. If I feel like my monologue was not up to my standard, and I'm constantly raising my standard, I end up just stopping the run and resetting. And so that kind of artificially deflates my numbers, but not by that much. Because the third place that I play this, and kind of the place where I play it the most, is on the bus. And when I'm on the bus, I basically have all of my attention devoted to the game. I'm not speedrunning, and I'm not trying to do anything fancy. Now, I do have a tendency to take unnecessary risks. I'm the kind of player, winning is not really important to me a lot of the time. And so, in my kind of more casual play of this game, I will often make decisions of the form, well, this will probably get me killed, but it will be fun. And so things like going into the Red Rock Valley that are not really useful for getting an Orb of Yendor end up getting me killed, especially as I've been learning more and more how to get through the Red Rock Valley, which is still very challenging and still kind of requires some geometric shenanigans that I'm not very confident with. And so part of it is that. Part of it is just that I am kind of a not very cautious person, and I tend to try to go through things a little bit more quickly than I should. I tend to try and take a lot of mental shortcuts, and so that ends up leaving me in a lot of bad positions because I think, oh, it'll be okay. And I just don't pay enough attention to actually get through the game. And so that's a big part of it. And then I think also there's the issue that I'm not as good at this game as other roguelike players might be, because I've been playing this game for something like a year. I think I have like 70 hours in Steam, plus as many or more on mobile. And so I don't have as many hours as somebody who has been playing Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup since the 90s, or has been playing Rogue since the 80s. So I don't have as much expertise. And then this game does kind of it is a very volatile game. A lot of roguelikes, you make a mistake, and then you have to play very well in order to recover from the mistake, but it is possible. There are healing items, there are ways of recovering from a mistake as long as you only make one mistake at a time, and you don't make another mistake as you're trying to recover. In this game, you don't really get that. One mistake is basically instant death. There are mistakes that you can make that are not instant death, like that mistake I just made right there where I splashed slime on one of the treasures that I wanted to gather. But a lot of the mistakes that would just get you in a bad position in a lot of roguelikes will just get you killed in this roguelike, because you only have one hit point and you don't really have any kind of protections just beyond don't get checkmated. And you can pick up things like Orb of Teleport and Orb of Flash that can save you from a tight spot, but those are pretty limited in their usefulness because they're on timers. So there's a lot of reasons why I would have such a low win rate in this game, but I still kind of come back to just I don't have the kind of win rate that I would like to have, because I don't pay enough attention, because I do get careless, and here I've actually gotten a little bit careless and needed to work through some tactics there to make sure that I didn't run into both of those slimes at the same time, because running into two different colored slimes at the same time can get you killed. It's a very easy way to lose this game. And now that we have all 10 treasures from this area, I do want to make my way towards an exit. And I saw quite a few exits earlier, but now that we actually want one, I'm not really seeing anything very tempting. There's not much use in going into the Living Cave at this point. We've already collected our 10 treasures from there, and so we would just be kind of trading one kind of risk for another, and there's not actually a lot of risk in traveling through the alchemy lab. It's kind of a calculated risk to go into the Land of Eternal Motion now, because it can be difficult to get to exits. It can sometimes be as difficult to get to exits here as it is in the alchemy lab, but I do have a little bit more freedom of movement. And as long as I am careful, I should be able to get out, and indeed I was. So there's an achievement for getting walls to grow outside of the living cave. And that's something that I have been thinking about a lot, and thinking about, well, every time I kind of go by one, I think, well, how am I going to do that? And I've tried stuff involving using the Orb of Flash to turn troll corpses into living floor, but I couldn't ever get walls to grow on them, and so I think that you might need a large amount of floor in order to grow walls. So that would take a very long time and probably require quite a lot of Orbs of Flash. I'm not sure exactly how I would do that. Well, I picked up that Orb of Storms in order to deal with a potential eagle, and that's exactly how I ended up using it, so that worked out fairly nicely, I would think. So the Mirrored Land is one of the areas where I really can get bit by my lack of attention, because eagles can sneak up on you very quickly, and so if you're not really paying attention, they can be very dangerous. And so my usual strategy is to stay near a wall, because that gives me access to choke points that I would not otherwise have. And we are very nearly done with this area. And I do not see any threats coming from the edges of the screen. I think it's very important this time in particular that I really check for that, because it's actually much later in the weekend as I'm recording this than I usually record these. It is already Sunday evening, and I am really not certain when this is going to go up. Obviously, by the time you're seeing it, you know when it's going to go up, but there could be a very long gap between when I'm recording this and when I'm actually able to upload it. But my hope is that it won't be too long, and that I will be able to get this up in a reasonable amount of time, and that this will be the last take that I do, which again, you will know that, but I do not at this point, as I am recording this, know whether or not this will be my last take. And so I can just continue to try and play carefully, and continue to gather treasures, because really that's all I can do. So one thing that I've really been paying attention to recently is to do with the forests, and basically that you can very quickly move out of the range where you have to worry about forest fires. It does not take very long to get ahead of a forest fire, and they spread slowly enough across the grass that you can just go a few steps, and then I believe they actually stop updating. I'm not entirely certain, but it seems like things stop updating when they go out of sight. And so I think that that also makes it a little bit easier to escape forest fires by going just outside of the forest and going along the wall. Now, I would like to get both of these areas knocked out, and then I'm a little bit anxious about the time because I have laundry that I'm doing and uploads that I'm working on and games that I'm working on. I'm continuing to make a game. I actually got addicted to my game for the first time today, which I think is a very big milestone. And it's interesting. I was really certain that the kind of solving programming problems would be the really tedious, difficult part, and that building levels would be really fun. And what I'm actually finding is that building levels is the tedious part, that I'm enjoying building levels a lot less, or at least I was. I'm starting to get to the point where I am actually enjoying it. But there was a while when it kind of felt like, oh, I guess this game needs levels now, doesn't it? And so I'm thinking about setting up a way to kind of crowdsource that. I've been thinking about kind of opening this game up as something that anyone could work on if they wanted to, and that is something that seems like a very good idea once I am able to do project management. Right now I'm not really in a space where I have the time and energy to manage a project. Oh my goodness, okay. Got in a bit of trouble there, once again not paying enough attention. But we are one statue of Cthulhu away from being out of Relia. Okay, this is a bad situation. That ivy is going to come up next to me at the same time as the dog, but the ivy will be dormant. And the this farthest ivy will be active. I'll kill the dog. That will make this ivy above me active, but it will not grow yet. And let's see, this guy will then move up to me, and I'll kill him, and then this ivy will become active. So I believe we should be able to get out of this still. But I did not see this guy. I think we're still okay. Yes, good. And we have made it out of Relia. I was thinking recently about Relia and kind of the references in this game, and there's a lot of references in this game to stories that I know I would like if I read them. Like, I have read little bits of Dune, I have read little bits of Lovecraft, and so I kind of have this sense of, well, if I know I would like it, why haven't I read it? Why don't I just pick it up? I mean, Lovecraft is all public domain. So I don't even have to buy a copy of The Call of Cthulhu. I can just pick it up and read it anytime I want to, so why haven't I? And there are a lot of things in my life that have been this way of, I know I would like them, so why don't I go after them? And I've really been, throughout my life, I've been someone who doesn't really go after more a lot of the time. I will often be content with just having good things, and there's a lot of good things in my life, but it can be very frustrating to the people around me when it seems like I'm not going after things that would make my life better, and not doing things that would improve my life and improve my ability to relate to people. You know, it's not just a selfish gain of enjoying something. It can actually be a, oh dear. Okay. I am going to step through here, and that will trap the fire fairy. And then we can kill these hedgehog warriors, kill the fire fairy. And we do not have a good way of getting out of here, so I'm just going to flee and hope that we can find an exit. And really pay attention to combat, because I am really taking a lot of unnecessary risks here. You know, I don't think that reading The Call of Cthulhu or reading Dune will have a huge impact on how I relate to the people around me, won't really make me a better citizen in any really significant way, but there are a lot of things that would really improve my life and really improve my ability to kind of serve the people around me if I went after them. If I had a better job, I would be able to give more. If I made more money, I would be able to pay more rent, and I would be able to give more to people, and I would just be able to do so much more. And it doesn't hold a lot of appeal for me as like, oh, well, now I have more money, I can do things. But I have to also be aware of what my not having money does to the people around me, that it makes life more difficult for them, it makes life less pleasant for them, and things like my never having learned how to drive is something that doesn't really impact me very much, and the gain that I would gain by learning how to drive just doesn't seem worth the immense risk and difficulty that would be required. But my not being able to drive does negatively impact the people around me. It does make it more difficult for me to go to events. It makes it more difficult for me to get to appointments. And it means that sometimes I have to call on people to help me, and I'm not able to respond in kind. And so learning to drive would actually have more of an impact on the way that I am able to be a better person around other people, rather than having a really direct effect on my life. Now, I would like to use this Orb of Teleport cleverly, but I'm just not seeing a good situation. I think what I want to do is actually get the last emerald that we need and then find an Orb of Safety. And then we will wrap it up and continue in the next episode, but before we can do any of that, we have to get that last emerald, and that last emerald is proving fairly difficult to find. I'm not seeing any really easy to get ones. I think I see one actually over here that is relatively easy to get to. And I want to deal with this pikeman. And then I want to get over to this emerald. And then I want to teleport over here so that I can get to this Orb of Safety. And that is where we're going to leave it. So I hope to see you in the next episode, but most of all, thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.